This raid featured a new Conqueror hull, the Aries, which is the flagship and likely the last Tier 12 Conqueror. Today I'm going to go over a build. Hey everyone, Debra here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. A few things to mention, as always, this is a PvP video. The build I'm showing you here is my own and is likely going to be very similar to everyone else. It's not some sort of alliance secret, and I'm not really convinced that these exist. The build I'm showing you is also going to be available in my builds document, which is something made possible by the channel members. If you're interested in just having your name on here and supporting the channel, you can click the join button at the bottom of the screen, right next to the like button there. Let's go ahead and get into the build. Now, the first thing I want to discuss for the Aries is that it is a pretty powerful hull just by itself, but it does have the ability to equip a specific CIC which will help buff your fleets. The Hellmaws CIC buffs Hellmaws, the Hololight buffs Hololights, and etc. Currently, as of mid-December, the Paragon is the strongest ship or strongest individual hull in the game right now. This means that it's going to get a relatively low buff, whereas the weaker ships like the Hellmaws or Hololights are going to get a very, very strong buff. It's really important to remember when you're driving that you need to stay within the range, which is 120 for the Hellmaw and Hololight, 100 for the Contagion, and is all the way down to 80 for the Paragons. That is really important. Make sure your Aries stays alive and is the last ship killed if you are using this to buff other things here. Currently, the strongest fleet is still 4 U1 Paragons and the Aries. Now, this is important to remember, but we might be getting U1, U2 upgrades, whichever, for the Hololight and Hellmaw or the Contagion or even the Paragon itself. I would recommend right now, if you want the strongest ship in mid-December, build the Paragon CICs with 4 Paragons in the back. Although, if you want the strongest buff to your individual fleets, the Hellmaw one is the way to go. You could get 2 of the Aries for 7 million points each in the raid. I would build 1 Paragon, 1 the Hellmaw. Currently, I'm intending to build mine as a Hellmaw CIC because I have 4 U1 Hellmaws and I only have 1 U1 Paragon. That should help clear up a few of the extra things here. Now, the CIC is a very long build time. The blank build time for the hull is 3 days, 18 hours. That jumps up to 10 days. That's an 8-day build time, which is massive. So you're going to be waiting a week to equip this thing on here, which is an absolutely incredulous build time. I wish it was much shorter, but it's not. So there's my discussion on the CICs. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into a little bit of the build and the stats on the whole. This thing does have 2 million or 2 billion, however many zeros this has in terms of armor points, which makes it very strong all on its own. Everything else is pretty standard here, and the defenses and deflections like that are relatively standard. Ignore deflections, you just want to focus on the defenses. Pretty weak against corrosive and pretty weak against radioactive. Radioactive is not too much of a threat, really just the fire breather, which I'm not even using in my base unless it gets a U1 upgrade. In terms of the weapons for the ship, you're going to want to use the Ram's Horn missile, the thing that came with the ship. It's going to turn it into a little bit of a glass cannon sniper build, which is the idea behind this one. For the engine, you're going to want to use just the M engine, the Conquest Engine M. That's the one that came out with the ship. That's relatively standard, and you probably have a few of these at this point. We are going to want to do a few things to buff the missile range. The first thing I want to do is put on the holographic targeting. This is very, very good and just gives you range. I guess the reload is nice, and flak beta bonus is not necessarily the most important because you already have that equal to 90% on there. That being 90% has meant that some people are starting to use flak guns in their bases, which is really interesting. I have a few of mine on my portals, as you can kind of see down here maybe. They don't do a whole lot, but if you turned all your extra turrets into those, it might start to do something. I also do want to note that you can buff and increase the range even further, which is going to be pretty important for playing against the Dreadhusk. I'll let you do a little bit of the math yourself on if you can outrange them or not, as a little bit of a PvP sort of secret for you guys there. But in general, I'm going to recommend that people should probably be extending the range of this thing using the penetrative scope, and that's going to increase the range at the detriment of your damage a little bit here, but I believe is worth it, and I believe you do want to extend your range even though you are losing a little bit of damage. Now for the other special slots, we're going to go back over to the standard PvP items. You actually do not want to use Conquest Battery 2. This is going to give you 110% building damage and some combat speed, which is nice. Instead, I'm actually going to recommend the Assault Battery, because the way the damage calculations work, using the building damage and the penetrative damage on top of each other works out to be more than plus 110%. You do 1.25 times 1.75 and compare that to 2.10. So the Assault Battery is the better option here, even though it's a lower tier. It doesn't give you combat speed, but I haven't found that to be incredibly important, especially with pretty much any motion will make the Ionic Railgun as it currently stands miss. I did make a video yesterday, by the way. It's actually the same day as I'm recording this, but I'm scheduling this one to post yesterday. The Ionic Railgun is going to miss you pretty much every single time as it currently stands. I have a video showing the Aries in action against my base. I sometimes put that up in the background of these videos, although it seemed like you guys really liked the Dreadhusk one by itself there, so I did something similar showing the new Railgun versus the new Conqueror ship. The other two special slots we're going to go for are just more things to increase damage and penetrative damage, building damage, stuff like that as normal. There's a pretty old penetrative special, which is somewhere around here. It is the precision missile system. This gives you penetrative accuracy, which is nice against ships if people try and build evade. Really, the only evade I currently have is on my pip holes, but I need to refit those off. The damage and stuff like that is really nice as well. Not too worried about projectile speed, but penetrative damage is the main reason for this special. And then the last one, but definitely not the least important one, is going to be the Invasion Scanner 3, which looks like I'm just about out of, so that's interesting. But this gives you a ton of damage, tactical field resist, which I suppose I can let you see just a little bit more clearly here at the bottom. And it is a really nice special for several different things there. Invasion Scanner 3 is overall a pretty nice, pretty important special to include on basically every single Conqueror ship you have. It came out a while ago, no Invasion Scanner 4 yet, but you should definitely include that one. In terms of the armors, I do want to briefly show you a little bit of an update I made to my Tier 12 spreadsheet. What this does is it kind of shows you all of the different important defenses for each of these holes. I don't have armor points on there, which is something I was considering adding, but if you look at the Aries column, you'll see that it has really low radioactive and really low corrosive resist, which is something I talked a little bit about, which means that you probably want to put on those two armors. Now, because most people are not using the fire breather at all in their base whatsoever, that pretty much settles on corrosive armor, the corrosive invader plates, which are very, very helpful against, say, the mine melter scattergun, which I believe every single person in the game has 4 of those in their base pretty much, because there's not a wide selection of turrets to choose from. In fact, I think I only have 11 damage turrets in my base. So there's the build for the ship, and remember, use whatever CIC is relevant. I'm not going to include a CIC in the hash code that I'm posting in my build stock for this video, because it's so important to include the right one here, otherwise you'll have 8 days of the wrong build. If you're using this with Paragons, put on the Paragon CIC, Hellmaws, the Hellmaws CIC, and similar. There is my overall thoughts on the build. It's going to turn out to be a really, really powerful ship, and you can change things as you like. If you think corrosive art's not the way to go and you want to defend against the Dreadhusk, you can put on more explosive armor, although you should consider your range and the range of the defending Dreadhusks before you do that. I want to give a huge thank you to the channel members whose names appear on the end screen now. They're helping keep the channel running and are why I can provide things like the build stock. If you find that doc or these videos helpful and want to support, you can click the join button on YouTube. As always, and until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.